Want to switch to just all-nighters and like, are they real? And like, what happens when they happen?
Yeah, it's fresh. We could talk about it. For the past few months, we've been working on changing how we bill for one of our products. We simplified the billing because a lot of the feedback we got was this is too complicated. We don't understand it. So we've been
look at Firebase.
yeah.
If you ever want to look at anything
complex
complicated.
billing, yeah, or even Azure is complex. But we really wanted to simplify our billing, and we had probably, I don't know how long, maybe 7 years of invoice history for some of our clients on this product. And we needed to go from billing one way to billing another, and we needed that to happen at a particular moment in time and for that transition to be perfect. And I think the project was originally scheduled to be done in like a month. It ended up taking like 5 months, and testing was a huge part of that. It took us a long time to like simulate credit card processing and figuring out, how do you test that conversion multiple times over to be 100% certain that everything's going to work. So by the time we're ready to roll this out, it's end of August, and we had upgraded all of our Stripe APIs to the most current version at the time.
Yeah. For anybody listening, Stripe it's kind of like a PayPal. It's a developer plugin. Well, it's not even just developer, but it's a plugin you can put into your application to facilitate payments without having to be
PCI compliant.
PCI compliant.
Yeah. There's a bunch of like legal hoops you got to jump through if you're going to like touch a credit card in software, and Stripe takes on all that liability, and
you have to implement it in a very specific way. But
yeah, we don't have to be PCI compliant. Stripe is. So it's the night of the release, and I intentionally scheduled the release at 11 o'clock at night because I just knew something was going to go wrong. So right after I put my kid to bed, she's like, "Daddy, how long is it going to take?" I'm like, "I don't know. Hopefully an hour, maybe 2 days."
And here's to say it, and this is go live. Like, you're doing it for real now. You've already staged this 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, multiple times. We've tested this out. We've proven that it works.
Yeah, and staging is just, so, you have your test environments generally, then you have a staging environment to just test out the deployment of, do I know what's going to happen? Am I going to hit the snakes? Whatever it is.
So 12 o'clock rolls out. We do the upgrade, and I'm like rewriting all the webhooks to capture the events when credit cards pass and fail and invoices generate. And I run into a problem. I'm upgrading the Stripe API from version 1 to version 3. Those weren't the numbers, but yeah.
Yeah.
And come to find out, Stripe had just released a new version of their API like 10 days prior. And we didn't catch this because on staging and UAT and all of our test sites, we had upgraded Stripe months prior to the target version. But the target version was no longer the most recent, and you couldn't upgrade to it. So all of our webhooks were failing because Stripe was very particular about
what version
you're sending and receiving. And all the webhooks are saying, the version you're expecting in your webhook is not what we're sending you, so we're not gonna
it's
fail
not gonna
this.
register,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
So at that point, it's like 3 a.m, and I'd finally figured out the problem, and I call our team in India, and I'm like, "Hey, I don't even know if you guys are working right now, but I need you to upgrade the Stripe API to the latest version." So we went to the August build of it, and I'm like, "I need you guys to just poke around a little bit, make sure nothing looks terribly broken, but we don't have a choice. People are going to be waking up in 4 hours. They're going to need the software to work. We have 3 hours to fix this problem." He's like, "Got it." So he upgrades the Stripe version. It was a NuGet update. Did some basic smoke testing. We had like 80% confidence this was going to work, but that was kind of terrifying because we were running up against a clock, and there was no way we were going to be able to do the amount of testing we needed to do to prove that it worked. But I knew that if we did nothing, it was going to be terrible. And there was no rolling back because we had
already migrated
all the data's been migrated. Yeah. So this was like the worst or the best case scenario of
the worst worlds.
Yeah, the worst worlds. So yeah, morning comes, the payments work, everything's great. and then the server crashes. Once the users start coming in, and it's at this point, it's not because of Stripe anymore. It's because
people are using it.
And so at this point, I hadn't slept in over 24 hours. It was probably, I think I called you at like 8 a.m. Yeah, it was 8 a.m. and the server is. I had thought up to this point the server was crashing because of the Stripe webhook failures. Mm-hmm. Once we get those resolved.
And I guess, so my question for you, just before I get too far, is why do you think that would be failing because of those webhook failures?
Because the logs table was getting flooded. Like
we're getting too many 500s.
Yeah.
Like the system's just like, I'm not working and I don't want to work. Let me just restart to see if I can recover myself.
Yeah.
Which is a thing that some servers do. Azure has it. It's called auto heal. I know we didn't have auto heal turned on, but to your point is we're just hitting so many 500s that is flooding the system.
And part of this release too, we had changed some of the server configuration. So we went from like 8 scaled servers down to 4, but they were better. They were like had better CPU and better RAM. So I'm thinking to myself like, well, do we have to go back to the 8? You know, because we've introduced so many different points of change, it's really difficult for me to pinpoint what the problem is. Mm-hmm. So I'm just rolling back what I can to try to figure this out. And ultimately, I realize, hey, there's a very slow query that is timing out the server, and it's being executed a ton.
Mm-hmm.
It was
way too frequently.
And it wasn't even like a bunch of queries. It was just one query that was terribly inefficient. It was like a SQL statement with like, in the where clause, it had 2 date conversions, and the CPU reads on that query were in the tens of millions.
Yeah.
And the reason we didn't catch it in staging was because we didn't have enough data. We had a client in production that had 7 years of data over 5 million records in a table, and our sample size when we were testing was in the thousands, not in the tens of millions or the millions. So we didn't see this problem until we went to production, and we ended up having to make a midday hotfix where we just turned the feature off. I think we just changed the API to return nothing.
Yeah.
We get it stable, and yeah, there we are today, where we're like the system's stable. It's not 100% functional.
Well, it's functional. All the important pieces are there.
Yeah, but we had to turn off, and it was stupid too. It was like what ended up breaking the server, apart from the Stripe API upgrade, was there was a chart that we built that showed usage over the last 1, 3, and 6 months, and that the developer chose to get all the data back, and then on the front end they filtered out the 1, 3, and 6 months, but they were returning everything. And when you have a client that had millions and millions of records and you're doing a date comparison in a where clause, and for those of you who don't know, when you're writing SQL and you put like a scalar operation, like a function in the where clause, and a date part or a date conversion is a scalar function.
And a scalar function returns a singular value.
Yeah.
So
that scalar operation happens n number of times for every row, and when you have 2 of them, it's 2n. This goes back to our episode of Big O. Can we put that somewhere up here? I think we can do that. That was a 2n operation that when it got to production, it took the server down. Mm-hmm. And the crummy thing about SQL too is like when it tanks, you get a bunch of these red herrings, you get a bunch of errors, and it's really hard to figure out which one of these is the thing that's taking it down versus which one of these are just symptoms of the server being down.
Right. I mean, and I'm thinking through some other times that we've had, a release went out, and again, it's back to how many people are using the system at once, right? Like sometimes it's not one bad performing query. Like this time it was. You're like, holy crap, it's a lot of reads and writes. Sometimes it's one query executed way too many times.
Yeah, so from the metric standpoint, it's like, oh, this query runs in 10 milliseconds, but it's running 10 million times. Yeah. And that 10 milliseconds, 10 million times adds up. So yeah, that was last week for me.